Oliver Stewart woke up from the familiar pressure in his bladder, which came over him every night around 3 in the morning. 40 years of life had accustomed his body to this ritual, and he no longer fought it, simply accepting it as a fact of life. Carefully lifting himself out of bed, he tried not to disturb Camille, who was sleeping next to him with her back turned toward him. Her breathing was even and deep, her dark curls scattered across the white pillow, creating a sharp contrast. Barefoot, trying not to creak the floorboards, Oliver headed for the bedroom door. Moonlight filtered through the thin curtains, casting a soft silver glow throughout the room. The Florida night was muggy even with the air conditioning on, and Oliver felt his shirt stick slightly to his back. Returning from the bathroom, he noticed that Camilla's phone screen was lit up on her bedside table. She usually put her phone on silent at night, but she must have forgotten tonight. Oliver glanced at the glowing screen and froze. "I miss your lips. I can't wait for tomorrow night. I'll be waiting for you at the usual place at 8. I hope this time we'll have more time for everything we planned." The message was from a contact listed simply as D. Oliver felt his heart skip a beat and his mouth suddenly go dry. He reread the text, hoping he had made a mistake, that it was some kind of misunderstanding. But the words remained the same. His hands trembled slightly as he carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand. Camilla didn't move, continuing to sleep peacefully. Oliver looked at her face in the moonlight. The same high cheekbones, the same delicate nose, the same full lips he kissed every morning before work. Had someone else kissed those lips? He spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling. Thoughts raced through his head like birds in a cage. Maybe it was a joke from a friend, or a misdelivered message. But the intimate tone left no doubt about the nature of the sender's relationship with Camilla. At breakfast the next morning, Oliver studied his wife's face, trying to find any signs of deception or guilt. Camilla, as usual, was focused on the morning news on TV, occasionally commenting on political events. Her behavior seemed perfectly normal. The same slight smile when she handed him his coffee, the same gentle touch on his shoulder as she passed by. "We're having dinner with Mom and Amara tonight, you didn't forget, did you?" she asked, spreading jam on her toast. "Of course I haven't forgotten," Oliver replied, trying to sound natural. "Mom wanted to discuss plans for Amara's birthday next month. You know how she likes to plan everything in advance." Oliver nodded, pretending to listen, but his mind was elsewhere. Camilla got up to get ready for work, and he watched her go. In her gray business suit, with her hair neatly styled, she looked like the picture of a model insurance accountant. Could this woman, with whom he had lived for 7 years, really have a lover? The day at work passed in a fog. Oliver mechanically answered client calls, discussed medical equipment deliveries, and participated in a planning meeting, but his thoughts kept returning to the night's message. By lunchtime, he realized he couldn't keep it to himself anymore. He dialed the number of Brandon Strong, his friend from college. Brandon worked as a mechanic at a factory and was always ready to listen without judgment or unsolicited advice. "Can we meet after work?" Oliver asked. "I need to talk." "Sure, bro. Something happened? You sound serious. I'll tell you when I see you." They agreed to meet at a small bar on the outskirts of town, where Brandon often spent time after work. It was a quiet place, without excessive noise or prying eyes. That evening, while getting ready for dinner with his family, Oliver watched Camilla in the bathroom mirror. She was putting on light makeup, humming to herself. She seemed to be in a great mood. "What time are your mom and Amara coming?" he asked. "At 7. Mom said she's bringing her famous apple pie, and Amara promised to tell me about her new job at the clinic." Oliver remembered how Amara had recently changed jobs, moving from the city hospital to a private clinic. The sisters always discussed everything with each other, sharing news and plans. I wonder if Camilla shares the details of her personal life with her sister. At exactly 7 o'clock in the evening, the doorbell rang. Oliver opened the door and saw Olivia Gray with a pie in her hands and Amara next to her. Amara and Camilla were twins, and on top of that, loved to have the same hairstyles. As always, Oliver was struck by the sisters' resemblance. If it weren't for their different clothes, and the fact that Amara was a few minutes younger, it would have been impossible to tell them apart. Same facial features, same height, same gait. "Oliver, dear, how are you?" Olivia hugged him warmly and maternally, as always. At 61, she retained the energy and liveliness of mind that had once made her one of the best teachers in the district. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Gray. Please come in." Amara smiled at him and hugged him too. Unlike Camilla, who always smelled of expensive perfume, Amara exuded a light scent of hospital soap and some kind of floral lotion. "Where's my other daughter?" Olivia asked, looking around. "Camilla is in the kitchen, finishing dinner," Oliver replied, taking the guests' coats. At dinner, Olivia talked about her neighbors. Amara shared her impressions of her new job, and Camilla discussed her plans for the weekend. Oliver tried to participate in the conversation, but felt that his answers sounded forced and formal. Several times he caught his mother-in-law's searching gaze. "Oliver, you look pale today," Olivia remarked as they moved on to dessert. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just tired from work. Lots of new contracts, lots of paperwork." "Men always say they're just tired when something's bothering them," Olivia smiled. "In my teaching career, I saw it all the time. Both the kids and their fathers." Camilla looked at her husband with slight concern. "Maybe you should take a couple of days off? We could go to the ocean like we planned." "Maybe," Oliver replied vaguely. Amara also looked at him intently. "There's a good therapist at the clinic. If you want, I can give you his contact information. Sometimes stress builds up unnoticed and then makes itself felt." "Thanks, but I'm fine. Really." The conversation turned to planning Amara's birthday. Olivia suggested celebrating at a restaurant, Camilla insisted on a party at home, and the birthday girl herself was fine with either option. Oliver listened to their discussion, but his thoughts were far away. He imagined Camilla meeting the mysterious D at the usual place tomorrow evening. Where was that place? How long had this been going on? And most importantly, why? After the guests left, Camilla cleaned up the kitchen while Oliver sat in the living room pretending to watch TV. In reality, he was thinking about what to do next. Could he just ask his wife directly? What if she denied it? What if she told him the truth? "You're acting really strange," said Camilla, appearing in the doorway with a towel in her hands. "Mom's right. Is something wrong?" "Everything's fine. I'm just thinking about work." She walked over to him, sat down on the arm of the chair, and stroked his hair. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" The irony of the situation struck Oliver. His wife was comforting him, offering to share his problems, while hiding her own affair with another man. "I know," he replied curtly. "Go to bed. Tomorrow is a new day. Maybe things will work out with him." Oliver watched her as she headed for the bedroom. Tomorrow. Tomorrow evening she would meet him. And Oliver already knew that he couldn't just sit at home and wait. The next day, during his lunch break, he met Brandon at the agreed bar. The place was half empty. Quiet music was playing, and they were able to get a secluded table in the corner. "So, what's going on?" Brandon asked, taking a sip of his beer. "You look like your world is falling apart." Oliver told him about the late-night message, his suspicions, and how difficult it had been to act normal. Brandon listened intently, without interrupting. "I see," he said finally. "This is serious. But listen, buddy, maybe you're jumping to conclusions." "What do you mean?" "Well, one message doesn't mean she's cheating on you. Maybe it's a joke, or a mistake, or... Brandon, did you read what it said? It's not a joke." "Okay, let's assume it's true. What are you going to do?" Oliver looked into his whiskey glass. "Good question. What was he going to do?" "I don't know. Maybe follow her tomorrow night." "And what good will that do? If you see what you're afraid to see, then what?" "Then I'll know the truth." Brandon shook his head. "The truth doesn't always set you free, bro. Sometimes it destroys you. Are you ready for that?" Oliver was silent for a long time, thinking about his friend's words. Was he ready? Was he ready to find out that his 7-year marriage had been a lie? That the woman he loved and trusted had betrayed him? "I don't know," he admitted honestly. "But I can't go on living in the dark." "Then be careful, and whatever you find out, don't do anything rash." "Promise?" "I promise." They shook hands, and Oliver felt a little relieved that he had shared his suspicions. At least now he wasn't alone with his thoughts. That evening, when Camilla announced that she was going to meet a friend from the office, Oliver just nodded. He knew it was a lie, but he wasn't ready for a confrontation yet. Tomorrow. Tomorrow he would find out the whole truth. Oliver spent the next day in a state of constant tension. He analyzed every sound, every movement Camilla made, trying to find confirmation of his suspicions or, conversely, proof that he was wrong. In the morning, she behaved as usual, kissing him on the cheek, talking about her plans for the day, asking about his business. But now every gesture seemed fake to Oliver. Every smile seemed forced. Around 8 in the evening, Camilla announced that she was going to take a bath. Oliver sat in the living room with his laptop, pretending to work on documents. But in reality, he was listening to every sound coming from the bathroom. The sound of running water, the door closing, light footsteps on the tiled floor. About 10 minutes later, he heard her voice. At first, he thought she was talking to herself, but then he realized that Camilla was on the phone. Oliver carefully got up from the sofa and approached the bathroom door. His wife's voice sounded muffled through the door, but he could make out a few words. "I missed you so much," she said quietly, almost in a whisper. "I thought about you all night last night." Oliver pressed his ear against the door, trying to breathe as quietly as possible. His heart was beating so loudly that he was afraid she would hear it. "No, he doesn't suspect a thing," Camilla continued. "He's acting normal. Yes, of course, I'll be careful." There was a pause. Apparently the other person was saying something. "I can't wait to see you either." Camilla's voice became even more intimate. "Remember what we did last time? I couldn't think about anything else all day." Oliver closed his eyes, feeling cold sweat running down his back. It was worse than he had imagined. His wife's voice sounded so tender, so passionate, unlike anything she had said to him in recent years. "I want to try what we talked about too," she continued. "We'll have time, won't we?" "Oh, it'll be incredible." Oliver slowly backed away from the door, trying not to make a sound. His legs were shaking, and he struggled to make it to the armchair in the living room. So now he knew for sure. Camilla was cheating on him, and judging by the tone of the conversation, it wasn't a casual fling, but a serious relationship. A few minutes later, the sound of water in the bathroom stopped, and soon Camilla came out, wrapped in a terry cloth bathrobe, her hair still wet. "Do you mind if I go to bed early tonight?" she asked as she passed him. "I have a busy day at work tomorrow." "Sure," Oliver replied hoarsely. "I'll work a little longer." She leaned over and kissed him on the top of his head. The smell of her shampoo, which had once seemed so familiar and pleasant to him, now made him feel nauseous. "Good night, dear." "Good night." Oliver waited until she was asleep, then quietly left the house. He needed some fresh air to think about what to do next. The Florida night was warm and humid, the air filled with the scent of blooming magnolias and the distant sound of cars on the main road. He walked through the quiet streets of his neighborhood, past identical houses with neat lawns and parked cars. Every house hid its secrets, its family dramas, but it seemed that nowhere was there such deception as in his own life. The next day, Oliver couldn't concentrate on his work. He mechanically answered emails, participated in conference calls, and met with clients, but his mind was preoccupied with only one question: what to do with the knowledge he had gained. He could just talk to Camilla, confront her, demand an explanation. But what if she denied it? What if she said he had made it all up? No, he needed proof, irrefutable facts. That evening, Camilla announced that she was going to the gym. She often went there 2 or 3 times a week, and Oliver had never questioned it. But now he realized that the gym could just be a cover. "Don't wait for me for dinner," she said, packing her gym bag. "I'm going to work out for a while, and then I'll stop by Linda's to discuss a project." Linda was her colleague, and Oliver had never doubted the truth of such explanations before. Now every word seemed like a lie to him. "Okay," he replied. "See you at home." Camilla kissed him on the cheek and left. Oliver waited a few minutes, then took the keys to his car. He decided to follow her. As he pulled out of the garage, he saw Camilla's red sedan turning at the end of their street. Oliver kept his distance, trying not to lose sight of her, but not getting too close. Traffic wasn't very heavy, which made his task easier. To his surprise, Camilla did indeed stop at the gym. Oliver parked across the street and waited. Maybe he was wrong after all. Maybe she really was there to work out. But half an hour later, she came out of the building, and it was obvious that she hadn't been working out. Her hair was dry and neatly styled, and her clothes looked the same as when she went in. She had just gone inside to create an alibi and then left through another exit. Camilla got into her car and drove away. Oliver followed her, feeling adrenaline rush through his veins. They drove through the city, past several shopping centers, and turned into a residential area that Oliver didn't know well. Finally, the red sedan stopped in front of a small one-story house with a well-kept garden. Oliver parked in the shade of large oak trees about 100 meters from the house and watched. Camilla got out of the car, fixed her hair, and headed for the front door. She didn't knock or ring the bell. She just opened the door with her key. She had a key to this house. Oliver sat in the car, his hands clenched on the steering wheel, and waited. The minutes dragged on unbearably slowly. Warm light shone through the windows of the house, but he couldn't see what was happening inside. About an hour later, the door opened and Camilla came out. But she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was a tall man with dark skin, broad shoulders, and an athletic build. He was wearing jeans and a white shirt and looked about 35 years old. Oliver watched as the man put his arms around his wife's waist as she tilted her head back as he kissed her on the lips. It wasn't a friendly kiss or a casual gesture. It was a kiss between lovers, passionate and long. The man pressed Camille against the wall of the house, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. They kissed, oblivious to the fact that they were on the street where anyone could see them. Their bodies pressed against each other, and it was obvious that there was a deep physical connection between them. Oliver felt a heat rising in his chest that was unlike anything he had ever felt before. It was a mixture of rage, pain, humiliation, and something else he couldn't identify. His hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel, and he was afraid he might lose control. Finally, they pulled away from each other. The man said something to Camille, and she laughed. The same laugh Oliver had once loved so much. She kissed him again, quickly and easily, then headed for her car. Oliver quickly started the engine and drove away without waiting for her to get into her car. He had to get home before her so she wouldn't suspect he had been following her. At home, he paced from room to room, unable to settle down. The image of Camilla in the arms of another man was fixed in his mind, and he couldn't shake it. How long had this been going on? How had they met? Did she love him? When Camilla returned home around 10 o'clock that evening, she looked happy and relaxed. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, her eyes were sparkling, and she was humming a tune. "How's it going?" she asked cheerfully as she entered the living room. "Have you had dinner yet?" "Yes," Oliver replied curtly without looking up from the TV. "I had a great workout today. I feel so energetic. And Linda and I discussed a new project. It's very promising." The lies flowed so easily and naturally from her mouth that Oliver was surprised at his own naivety. How many times in the last few months or years had she deceived him in exactly the same way? "I'm going to take a shower," she said. "Then maybe we can watch a movie together?" "Maybe," he muttered. When she went into the bathroom, Oliver took out his phone and dialed Brandon's number. "I need to see you," he said when his friend answered. "Right now." "What's wrong, bro? You sound terrible." "I followed her. You were right. The truth doesn't set you free." "Damn, where should we meet?" "Same bar. I'll be there in half an hour." Oliver told Camille that he had a headache and was going for a walk. She expressed sympathy and offered him a pill, but he refused. Brandon was already waiting for him at the same table in the corner of the bar. One look at Oliver's face was enough to understand the seriousness of the situation. "Tell me everything," he said, pushing a glass of whiskey toward his friend. Oliver told him everything, about the conversation he overheard, about being followed, about what he saw at the stranger's house. Brandon listened silently, shaking his head occasionally. "So it's serious," he said finally. "This isn't just a fling. They're in a relationship. It looks like it. She even has a key to his house. What are you going to do?" Oliver was silent for a long time, twirling his glass in his hands. The alcohol helped numb the pain, but it didn't solve the problem. "I don't know. Talk to her? Demand a divorce? Just walk away?" "Those are all reasonable options." "But I don't feel reasonable," Oliver admitted. "I feel betrayed, humiliated, deceived. That's natural. But don't do anything you'll regret later." They had a few more drinks, discussing the situation. Brandon tried to calm his friend down, suggesting various solutions to the problem, but Oliver hardly listened. The same thoughts kept running through his head. How could she do this to him? How could she lie to him every day? How could she kiss him in the morning and then sleep with another man at night? By midnight, Oliver was pretty drunk, but it didn't help. The pain and anger only grew stronger. Brandon offered to drive him home, but Oliver refused. He didn't want to go back to the house where everything reminded him of her lies. "I'll walk," he said. "I need to think." "Don't do anything stupid," Brandon warned. "Promise me. I promise." But as Oliver walked home through the dark streets, his mind was filled with completely different thoughts. He imagined breaking into the man's house, demanding an explanation, and making them both pay for what they had done to him. When he got home, he saw that Camilla was already asleep. She was lying in their bed, her head still resting on his pillow. How could she sleep so peacefully after what she had done? How could she pretend to be a loving wife after coming home from her lover? Oliver didn't go to bed next to her. Instead, he went to the garage, where his father's belongings were stored among old boxes and tools. Among them was a small safe that he hadn't opened in years. After dialing the familiar combination, Oliver opened the safe. Inside were documents, some cash, and his father's revolver, an old but reliable .38 caliber. His father had taught him how to shoot when he was a child, and Oliver remembered how to handle the weapon properly. He took out the revolver and several cartridges and checked the mechanism. The weapon was in good condition. His father had always taken good care of it. Oliver sat down on an old chair in the corner of the garage and began to slowly clean the revolver, thinking about what to do next. His thoughts were clouded by alcohol and emotions, but one idea was becoming clearer. If Camilla wanted to play games, if she wanted to lie and cheat, then there had to be consequences. Serious consequences. He imagined driving back to that house, going inside and catching them by surprise. He imagined the look on their faces when they realized they had been exposed. He imagined them begging for forgiveness, pleading for mercy. But would apologies be enough? Would tears and promises be enough? Could they make up for the humiliation they had caused him? Oliver loaded the revolver and unloaded it again, repeating the movements mechanically. The cold metal felt good in his hand, giving him a sense of power and control that he had so lacked in recent days. He sat in the garage until morning, thinking about revenge, justice, and how to regain his self-respect. By dawn, a plan began to form in his head, a plan that seemed like the only right thing to do. When the first rays of sunlight streamed through the garage window, Oliver hid the weapon in the safe and returned to the house. Camilla was already awake and making breakfast, humming the same tune she had sung the night before. "Good morning, dear," she said, acting as if nothing had happened. "How's your head?" "Better," he replied, struggling to contain his emotions. "Good. I made your favorite pancakes." Oliver looked at her and thought about how soon everything would change. The game was coming to an end, and he was going to win it at any cost. Oliver spent the next 2 days in a state of outward calm that hid the storm raging inside him. He went to work, talked to his colleagues, answered client calls, but it was all as if in a fog. His real thoughts were focused on one thing, what he had to do. Camilla behaved as usual, but now Oliver noticed details that had previously escaped his attention. The way she lingered on her phone screen while reading messages. The way she smiled to herself while standing in front of the mirror. The way she hummed melodies he had never heard before. On the evening of the second day, she announced that she was going to meet her colleagues after work the next day. "We're planning to celebrate the successful completion of the quarterly report," she said, without looking up from the magazine she was reading. "I might be late," Oliver nodded, pretending to be focused on the television program. Inside, he was seething with anger. Even now, when he knew the truth, she continued to lie to him with such ease. "Sure," he said calmly. "Have fun." The next day, on his way to work, Oliver took the revolver from the garage safe and hid it in the glove compartment of his car. The gun was loaded, and he checked the safety several times. His father's shooting lessons, which had seemed so distant, now came back to him with clarity. The workday dragged on unbearably slowly. Oliver kept looking at his watch, counting the minutes until evening. During his lunch break, he drove to Camille's lover's house to study the area again. The house stood on a quiet street, the neighboring properties hidden by high fences and thick bushes. It was the perfect place for what he had planned. By 6 o'clock in the evening, Oliver had already parked near the familiar house, in the shade of the same oak trees as last time. He turned off the engine and waited. The revolver lay on the passenger seat, covered with a newspaper. Time dragged agonizingly slowly. Oliver watched every car that drove down the street, every pedestrian. The lights were on in the house, but he couldn't see what was going on inside. Around 8 in the evening, a yellow taxi pulled up to the house. Oliver tensed, staring at the silhouette of a woman getting out of the car. Even in the twilight, he could make out a familiar figure, a familiar gait. It was Camilla. The woman paid the driver and the taxi drove away. She walked to the front door with the same confident stride she had walked into their house. She opened the door with her key and disappeared inside. Oliver sat in the car for a few more minutes, gathering his courage. His hands trembled as he took out his revolver. This was the moment of truth. Either he acted now, or he would never forgive himself for his cowardice. He got out of the car and slowly walked toward the house. The front door was unlocked. Apparently, they weren't expecting any uninvited guests. Oliver carefully turned the handle and went inside. The house was small, but cozy. The lights were dim, the furniture was soft, and photographs of landscapes hung on the walls. Sounds came from the bedroom, quiet laughter, whispers, the creaking of a bed. Oliver felt a wave of rage rising within him. He walked down the hallway, trying not to creak the floorboards. The bedroom door was ajar, and a strip of yellow light was shining through. The sounds became clearer, and Oliver realized that he had caught them at the very moment he had feared most. Oliver pushed the door open and entered the bedroom. What he saw made him freeze for a second. On the large bed with white sheets lay the man he had seen at the house a few days ago. And on top of him, with her back to the door, was a woman with familiar dark curls. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice him. The woman moved slowly, her silhouette outlined in the soft light of the bedside lamp. The man held her by the hips, whispering something in her ear. Oliver raised his revolver, and at that moment, the whole world shrank to the size of the room. No words, no explanations, no last chances, only justice. The first shot rang out deafeningly loud in the confined space. The bullet hit the woman in the back, and she screamed, leaning forward. The man opened his eyes, saw Oliver with the gun, and his face was filled with horror. "No, please," he began, but Oliver fired again. The second bullet hit the man in the chest. He jerked, his eyes rolled back, and blood flowed from his mouth. But Oliver didn't stop. A third shot, a fourth, a fifth. He kept shooting until he ran out of bullets, releasing all the rage and pain he had built up. The woman fell to her side, sliding off the man. Her breathing was ragged and wheezy. Oliver moved closer to look into the face of his betrayed wife, to see in her eyes the realization that she had gotten what she deserved. And then the whole world collapsed. The face he was looking at was Amara's. Oliver recoiled, dropping the revolver. It wasn't Camilla. It was her twin sister. The same features, the same hair, the same figure, but it was Amara. He recognized her by the small scar on her chin, which she had gotten as a child. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Amara looked at him with fading eyes. Her lips moved as if she were trying to say something, but only a rattle came out of her throat. Blood slowly spread across the white sheet. Oliver fell to his knees beside the bed. What had he done? How could he have been so wrong? Yes, the sisters looked alike, but he knew them both. He should have been able to tell them apart. But in the twilight, when the woman got out of the taxi, wearing the same clothes Camilla usually wore, with the same hairstyle, he had simply wished for the truth to be what he wanted it to be. Amara took her last, weak breath and fell silent. Her eyes remained open, staring at the ceiling with an empty gaze. The man next to her was also dead, his chest no longer rising. Oliver sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by the results of his mistake. He had killed 2 innocent people. Well, not entirely innocent. Amara was clearly cheating on someone, just like Camilla. but she wasn't his wife. She hadn't betrayed his trust. The realization of what had happened came slowly. If Amara was here, meeting this man, then where was Camilla? And what was going on? He remembered clearly seeing his wife here, following her from their house. Oliver picked up the revolver, reloaded it with trembling hands, and left the house. He had to get home, find Camilla, and get answers to questions that now seemed even more confusing. The drive home was a blur. Oliver barely remembered how he got to his neighborhood or how he parked his car. His hands were still shaking, and his ears were ringing from the gunshots. The lights were on at home. Camilla was in the living room, watching TV and eating ice cream straight from the container. She looked completely calm and relaxed. When she saw her husband, she smiled. "Oh, you're back early," she said. "How was work?" Oliver stood in the doorway, looking at his wife, unable to comprehend what was happening. If Camilla was at home, then what was Amara doing at her lover's house? Did they share a lover? "Where were you tonight?" he asked quietly. "At home," Camilla replied, without taking her eyes off the TV. "Where else?" "You know I didn't have any plans tonight. You said you were going to meet some colleagues." Camilla turned to him and looked at him in surprise. "When did I say that?" "You must be confused, dear." But Oliver remembered their conversation clearly, so she was lying again, or something even stranger was going on. He took out his revolver and pointed it at his wife. Camille saw the gun and dropped the ice cream container. "Oliver, what are you doing? Put that away." "I just killed your sister," he said calmly, "and her lover." Camilla's face turned pale. "What? What are you talking about?" "I shot Amara in her lover's house. I thought it was you." "You're crazy!" Camilla screamed, jumping up from the couch. "Amara couldn't be with her lover, she—" And then she stopped, as if she realized she had said too much. "What about her?" Oliver narrowed his eyes. "Go on." "Nothing. Amara doesn't have a lover." "That's not true. I saw them together. I saw them kissing, making love, just like I saw you with the same man a few days ago." Camilla was silent, staring at her husband with wide eyes. "Explain to me what's going on," Oliver ordered, cocking the trigger. "And don't you dare lie to me. I've already killed 2 people today, and it won't be hard to kill a 3rd. Camilla slowly sank back onto the sofa. Her hands trembled as she covered her face with her palms. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Then explain what it is." A long pause. Camilla breathed heavily, as if trying to decide whether to tell the truth. We see him together," she finally said. "Me and Amara." "What do you mean, together?" "We take turns. I go to him on even-numbered days of the month, and Amara goes on odd-numbered days." Oliver stared at her, unable to believe what he was hearing. "What?" "We met Demetrius at a party with mutual friends 6 months ago. He couldn't tell who was who at first, and then we realized that we liked it. We like confusing him. We like playing this game." "You're sharing one man?" "It's not what you think," Camilla said quickly. We're never there at the same time. It's just, we have a schedule." Oliver felt the rage rising in him again. This was even worse than he thought. Not just cheating, but some kind of twisted game between sisters. "And today was Amara's day," he said. "Yes, the 31st. An odd number. And you sat at home eating ice cream while I killed your sister, thinking I was killing you." Camilla began to cry. "You don't understand. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. It's just a game, just what?" Oliver snapped. "Just a way to make fun of me? Just a way to show what a fool I am? No, we never thought that about you. But you both lied to me every day. You came home from your lover and kissed me as if nothing had happened." "Oliver, please." But he wasn't listening anymore. Images from the last few days flashed through his mind. The conversation he overheard in the bathroom, the surveillance, the passionate kisses outside the house, the dead bodies in the bedroom. And all this time, Camilla and Amara had been playing some kind of sick game with him. "You're a pervert," he said with disgust. "You're both perverts. We didn't mean to—" "Shut up, just shut up." Oliver looked around, trying to figure out what to do next. He had killed 2 people. Sooner or later, they would find them. Sooner or later, the police would connect the murders to him. He needed time to get as far away as possible. In the garage, he found a roll of rope he had used to secure things in his car. Returning to the house, he ordered Camille to stand up and walk to the radiator in the corner of the living room. "What are you doing?" she asked, sobbing. "What I should have done a long time ago." He tied her hands behind her back and then tied them to the radiator pipe. The rope was strong, she wouldn't be able to free herself. "Oliver, don't leave me here," Camille begged. "Please." But he wasn't listening anymore. He went to the bedroom, packed a small bag with the most essential items and all the cash in the house. Then he took his documents and car keys. "Where are you going?" Camilla shouted from the living room. Oliver stopped in the doorway and looked at her one last time. She was sitting on the floor tied to the radiator, her face tear-stained and her hair disheveled. It was a pitiful sight. "Away from you," he said, "and away from all this shit. What about me? When will they find me? That's not my problem anymore. Maybe your mother will come tomorrow, maybe the day after tomorrow, or maybe she won't come at all." He took a kitchen towel and made a gag out of it, stuffing it into Camilla's mouth and tying it behind her head. Now she wouldn't be able to scream for help. "Goodbye, Camille," he said. "I hope your game was worth it." Oliver left the house, got into his car, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, he saw the house getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared from view. Ahead lay uncertainty, escape, perhaps a life in constant fear of being caught. But behind him he left even more: betrayal, lies, broken trust, and 2 dead bodies that would forever change his life. The Florida night was warm and dark, and Oliver drove along empty roads, not knowing where he was going, but knowing there was no way back.